This happened to me when I was around 12 years old. My parents had just started allowing me to stay at home when they went to visit local family members. One evening, I think it was a Saturday, they had gone to visit my grandparents and told me they would be gone for a few hours. It was snowing quite heavily outside, and I was sat upstairs playing on my PlayStation. Around an hour after my parents had left, I heard a loud knock on the door. My parents had told me not to answer the door to anyone, so I ignored it and carried on playing my game. After around 10 minutes, I had almost forgotten about the knock on the door when I heard another, even louder knock. This time it was at the back of the house on the patio doors. My heart did sink slightly when I realized I'd left the patio door unlocked, but I wasn't really worried. At this point I assumed it was somebody looking for my parents, and they would realize they weren't home and leave. It was when I heard the patio door slide open that I truly felt scared. I could hear someone moving around downstairs. I'd left the mobile phone my parents had left on the kitchen worktop, so I was not able to call for help. After being terrified for what felt like an eternity, I crept out of my bedroom and onto the landing. I could still hear movement downstairs, and I mustered the confidence to shout down, "Hello?" I heard somebody rapidly run towards the back of the house, and I assume back out of the patio doors. Either very bravely or very stupidly, I ran downstairs, and I found nothing. I ran to the patio doors and slammed them shut and locked them, and then I rang my parents. They arrived home around 20 minutes later, and they called the police. As soon as the police arrived, they pointed out that the footsteps in the snow seemed to walk from the front of the house around the back, but didn't come back out again, almost as if somebody had gone inside and not left. The police searched the house and found this guy hiding in our utility cupboard. They told us he had a knife and he was arrested. I found it very odd that this guy had broken into my house and, when I came downstairs, locked himself in a cupboard and didn't confront me at any point, even though he was armed. I guess I'm grateful for the fact that nothing else happened that night, and since then, I've always been very aware of my security.
I live about a 30-minute drive away from the Lake District, in a small township tucked away just to the south. I'm one of the new wave of people who enjoy jogging and act like they know all about it, and to be honest, I don't. I often take the scenic drive up to the lakes and jog around the area, taking in the sights and getting lost in the land. Sometimes I'd even take my dog and walk rather than jog. This particular time, I didn't have Lobo. I parked my car and put my trainers on. I'd been jogging a few months and felt like a real McCoy. Spandex pants, fluorescent green jacket, and one of those bottles you can hold in a fist. I'd warmed up and began jogging down the main path. I passed the regular types of people, other joggers, tourists, dog walkers, and other people too. I'd been jogging for roughly half an hour and was sat drinking water on a bench. The sun high in the sky, pushing light through the trees. It was summer, and it felt safe in the warm. I was sweating due to the heat and decided, glowing with confidence, to go off the main trails and under the cover of the trees into the shade. After roughly 5 minutes, I realised this was a bad idea. Roots were tripping me at every stride and branches whipping my face. I slowed to a walk, and as I was struggling to jog, I looked around. I was in the middle of nowhere. Trees surrounding me. I was well and truly lost. I walked back on myself and noted how dark it actually was due to the dense layer of branches. I stumbled around trying to follow the track I came, but Because I was running, I missed a lot of details and found myself even more lost. I came to an area where there were trees sloping down a long, not very steep, mud hill. I knew I hadn't come this way, but a bit of childhood explorer came out in me and I decided to go down the slope. I can't explain it and I'm not a superstitious type, but it felt as though something was calling me down. I dug my heels into the ground and, using trees to help me balance, shuffled down the hill. I reached the bottom and, in the distance, I thought I saw a clearing in the trees where light was spilling through. I began to wander over. It was about 100 feet away. As I got closer, I noticed small dens made from old branches low to the ground. The interior of the branch homes was the same, leaves and mud on the floor for comfort. I counted 7 of these houses and I could see little wooden people made out of twigs, like something a Wiccan would make. I heard sharp snaps coming up ahead and noticed the light in the clearing was low to the ground and a deep orange. It was midsummer and when I had started jogging into the undergrowth, the sun was high in the sky, and surely I hadn't been out that long. Had I? As I got closer, I noticed it wasn't light from the sun. It was from a large fire. I half-heartedly took cover behind a tree and looked on. The fire was surrounded by men in black robes with hoods, and the hoods had red triangles upside down on the back of them. Their faces were covered, but all of them were men. I could tell because of their figures and by the fact they all had long beards down past their chests, tied in rings. They were not stood around the fire chanting Latin in an attempt to conjure up a beast. On the contrary, they were all sat around making things with old branches and talking to one another. The language they were speaking seemed Latin, but I was unsure because, if I remember my history lessons right, the old Roman Catholics and the Wiccans didn't really see eye to eye, and this settlement seemed to be both. I was watching around the fire and saw a stone bowl, crudely crafted with streaks of crimson inside and around it. I was then horrified as I noticed one of these men had a small collection of large bones near him. I gasped louder than expected and put my hands to my mouth. Thankfully, not one of the men heard. I looked around more and realised how eerie the camp was. With it being at the latest 4 p.m. on a hot summer's day, it was very dark and the trees near the fire formed a small, almost perfect circle. I looked from tree to tree in the circle and saw the same crimson streaks that I believed to be blood on each of the tree trunks. Then I realised. My tree was in the circle. I pulled my hands off the trunk to see glossy red on my hands and jacket. I gasped, shocked, and backed up, crunching leaves and breaking twigs. The men all looked up and I remained fixed to the spot, wondering if they had spotted me and momentarily forgetting my fluorescent jacket. One of the men, he hissed at me and that was my cue to get the hell out of there. I bolted back the way I came and I could hear branches snapping behind me. I reached the hill I had scaled down and paused for a brief moment. I turned and saw they were hot on my heels. I began scaling back up on my hands and knees in a panic, hearing more of the men's unknown language as I climbed. I reached the top and I ran as fast as I could in any direction. After 5 minutes of non-stop sprinting, I hit a path and collapsed. I went to drink and realised I'd dropped the bottle back at the camp. 2 tourists found me and asked if I was okay due to the blood on my jacket. I assured them that I was okay and asked for directions to my car park. I headed back to my car and contacted the local authorities once I reached it and got home. The next day, they asked me to take them to the spot and I got the time off work and obliged. It took me a while to find the place, only knowing the general location, and the 2 police officers were nice but seemed sceptical. After a while, we came to the hill and clambered down and there was nothing. No fire, no blood on the trees, no people, and no dens. The police had a look around and I thought I had imagined it all somehow, until, in the distance, I noticed my bottle. I walked over and picked it up. Just underneath it was one of the small, twig figures. I don't know why, but I put it in my pocket and just ignored it, purposely not telling the truth to the police. I still have it now and I might be overthinking it, but I swear it resembles me.